Okay, that was comically bad. Let's try that again. That's better. Good evening, everybody. That was hilarious. With the accidentally speeded up version of the intro theme. Sorry about that. For some reason, the little in the browser, the little Studio One, the little metronome thing was ticked, which basically means that anything that's in the browser plays at the song's tempo, and the song tempo is just made it faster. And yeah, so there you go. I hope everybody is doing well. There are a lot of people that were very early into the show today. So you guys are crazy. I reckon there must be about 10 of you that were in the show 20 minutes before we start. So yeah, you guys are officially absolutely bonkerini. But that's cool, because I am absolutely bonkerini. So we are all totally bonkerini together, which is perfect. So anyway, welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Live with me, Jonny Lipsham, in Edinburgh, in Scotland, in the glorious United Kingdom. And it is absolutely piddling it down with rain outside. It's extremely wet. So The kids normally have the attic room upstairs, but the rain is so loud on the windows that they are downstairs tonight. So because they just couldn't sleep, it was just so loud. So yeah, I have no idea where I'm going to be sleeping once I finish this show. So that could be entertaining for me, I guess. I suppose I could be sleeping either on the sofa or in the bathtub, one or the other. So I hope everyone is okay, and Mike is here from Peace Valley Audio. Good to see you, buddy. And there's a whole bunch of people here, actually, and I'm going to go through the list in just a minute. But yeah, it's just been a bit of a funny Sunday where it's been glorious sunshine and it's been really nice and warm, and then within a few seconds it goes really, really dark, and then we get torrential rain for about an hour, and then it's fine again. It's really weird. But hey, I guess that is global warming, climate change, and everything else, so which is not good. Freak weather is set to become much more common, apparently, from what I have been reading. So let's go and take a look at who's here. And I can tell you that the first person in the room is Tony Stringert. At 11:21 p.m. UK time. So he was like 40 minutes in advance. Tony, I hope you're still here, because we are going to address your question. Because he has the first question of the night, which is to do with the shape of his room and getting the best out of it acoustically and getting his gear in the best position for that room. Unfortunately, he has a bit of a square room. From what I can gather, he says it's 11.5 by 11.5 feet. So it is pretty much exactly square, which is never really the best to be in, because everything is perfectly facing each other and you can get standing waves and all sorts of annoying acoustic anomalies going on there. So not entirely ideal. However, it's not something you cannot get past with some acoustic treatment. In fact, probably quite a bit of acoustic treatment, and getting them in the best place possible. I would say, is going to be key for you. And in fact, probably treating your mix position is going to be key for you. Now, normally I would advocate a room that is rectangular if it's possible. Or if it's not possible, then maybe trying to make it rectangular, even if it's a square, is another way in which you can get around that. And one of the ways you can do that is if you've got some cash, you can, and you're good at DIY, this is something you could build yourself, is to build some gobos that are maybe 6 or 7 feet tall and maybe 4 feet wide, and fill that with foam, rock wool, whatever, and then cover it with porous, breathable material on the front, and have 2 of those maybe on wheels so that you can move them around, so that when you're mixing, you can have them parked either side of you on that on those angles of first reflection, equidistant from your speakers, so that basically the idea being is you're creating fake walls, and the idea being that the speakers are exactly, or each speaker I should say, is exactly the same distance away from each gobo on either side of you. And so effectively you're creating a little fake little booth for your mix position, and then bass trapping the corners where you're located in the room is going to be a good idea as well. Windows can be a problem. In my old studio, I had my gear set up in front of the window, so the window was kind of where you are, there, behind the camera, and I was parked in front of that window, which meant you can get reflections off of that window coming back at you from your speakers. If your speakers are rear ported, like if the bass ports are in the back of the speakers, then they can fire into that space, and then they can reflect. Not only you get bass build up in the corners, so you bass trap those, but you can get reflections off of the back and off the glass coming towards you. So what I did was I put up a theater. I got some curtain material which is designed for deadening a theater space, and I put that up in front of the window. Just hung them up like a normal curtain, and that's what I did. I hung it up there, and that did a really, really good job of dealing with that back wall behind my speakers. I don't have that here because there is no window here. The window here is over there. It's in that back corner there, which is why I chose to set up here rather than behind me there. There are 2 things about the space behind me. The space behind me, I've got this nice little wardrobe, which you guys have seen before. And then I've got this glass mirror, which is part of the wardrobe. I have that pushed off as to the corner, basically, as much as possible. And I have a whole bunch of stuff just kind of like, you can't see it because the table is in the way, and the bass amp and everything else is in the way. But behind those is a whole bunch of stuff, which is just like spare curtains, spare duvets, spare pillows, cushions, that kind of stuff that we just have never unpacked or anything. That's all in that corner. So that's kind of creating a little bass trap, believe it or not. And it works in that little space there. So that mirror there is a big problem. It's a reflective surface. The window back there as well could be a big problem. So ideally, you want to try and position yourself so that wherever any windows are in the room, they are not on an angle of first reflection, or in front of you or behind you, or something like that. But, sometimes there are things you just can't get past because, hey, these are rooms in our houses. They're not designed to be studios. So there are some things you just can't get past because of the design of the room. And in your case, your room is a square. You can't get past that. But you can accommodate it. And you can make the best out of what you have. And you can also reference your mixes as well. So the first thing I would suggest after you've treated the room and got those first reflection points treated, after you've done that, the next thing I would do is play music that you know well. And you know what that music sounds like. And play it in your speakers with your speakers that you mix on in the mix position that you've selected and you've acoustically treated and prepared and everything else. And then sit in your mix position in that at the apex of your equilateral triangle. So that's where you should be kind of in your position, and listen to that music, because that'll tell you what a professionally mixed and mastered record is going to sound like in your mix position. And do that quite a lot. And then as you're mixing, refer to that regularly throughout your mixing period. So that, it helps you to learn the room. It helps you to steer a correct course through your mix. And so you actually learn what good music sounds like in your room, with all of its issues, with all of its faults and foibles, with all of the standing waves, with all of the comb filtering, with everything else. You know what it sounds like. And once you have that, then you will find that you will learn your room. You'll learn what frequencies stand out in your room. For example, this room, anytime I play an A flat, it really stands out. And that's because there is a resonant frequency in this room at A flat. So I have to be aware of those kind of things when I'm mixing. It just means there's a particular frequency that resonates in this room really, really well. And I have to be aware of that. And when I'm mixing, I have to accommodate that. So reference against a professional mixed and mastered track every time you mix until you get to know your room. But even then, I would say just persist in doing that anyway, because it will keep you honest. So referencing is a very good thing. The next thing I would suggest is check your mix on headphones, check your mix on earbuds, and if you are able to buy yourself a cheap, crappy little Bluetooth speaker or something like that, check your mix on that as well. And check your mix in mono. Make sure that when you collapse the mix to mono, you can still hear every single element of the mix. If anything disappears, then you know you've not EQ'd that particular element properly yet. And you need to go back and work on it until you can hear it when you flip back to mono. Okay? So those are the things that I would suggest to you, Tony. Your room is not an insurmountable problem. There's lots of folks with home studios for whom having a square room is a problem. And you're just going to have to be creative about how you go about dealing with that and learning that room. So I hope that really helps. And as I say, that was the very first question of the day. So we will now go and take a look at what else we've got. I do have a topic for tonight as well, though. Just so you know. Let's go and see. Okay, why is this slowed down? Okay, let's go all the way down. Okay, what is going on with my laptop here? Other than it's being a pain in the butt. Okay, lovely. John Lake is quite correct. He says, please no air cartons. Absolutely right. And you guys are giving lots of very sound advice here, which is very, very cool. Michael says, I was going to mention heavy drapes. Yes, if you can get theatre curtains, they are great for acoustically treating. I mean, they will kill a lot of reflections. The one thing that they won't necessarily kill is bass buildup, but they'll kill lots of low mids and highs and, upper mid frequencies. They will deal with that, but they won't necessarily kill the bass. But they'll deal with a lot of other things. So you'll find, if you put up theatre curtains in your room, suddenly your room goes really quite dead. Apart from the low end. But certainly, theatre curtains, if you can get hold of them, are fantastic. I definitely recommend those as an improvised form of acoustic treatment. Lollipop Guild says, I can make curtains. We'll have to look into materials. Yeah, nice thick curtain material is going to be really, really great. To be honest, any kind of curtain material is going to do something. Particularly if you have windows in your studio space and you know that they are providing reflections, particularly of upper mids and high frequencies that you don't want in your room, then certainly curtain material will deal with those. And it doesn't necessarily have to be particularly incredibly thick curtain material. Depends what you're needing to cut that's being reflected back off of windows and that kind of thing, or mirrors. When I first moved into this space, one of the things we were going to do, we haven't got to it yet. We've been in here over a year. We still haven't done it. But we were going to put a theatre curtain across the back there. And it would cover that mirror. And I was quite keen to see whether kind of having something over that mirror would make a difference or not. Now, my room is a rectangle, so, in a lot of ways, I'm okay. If you have a rectangular room, the cool thing about that is that you can set up on the shortest wall, or one of the two short walls, and then your speakers will be firing down the long wall. The reason why that is good is because bass frequencies are longer. Okay, the wavelength is much, much longer. They can be, as long as 32 feet long, or depending on the note. But, certainly they can be 32 feet long or longer. They can be 64 feet long. Now, here's the thing. Most rooms that are or bedrooms that are of a reasonable size like this one, this is quite a large one. This is like 12 by 10. So it's nearly a square, but not quite. The cool thing about that is that, a 32-foot wave, when it comes out of my speakers, is going to hit the back wall, and then it's going to reflect back in towards me, and then you'll get some phase cancellation as it comes back in to the room. And so that's kind of what happens with bass. So if you're in a particularly small room, like my old studio, which is like 9 by 10 just, that room was really, really small, and it basically meant that the bass there'd be a dead spot in the middle of my room where there's literally just no bass. And so, that kind of thing lulls you into a false sense of security. Oh, I must turn up my bass. I must turn up the bass. There is no bass. I cannot hear the bass. So you turn it up. And then you take the mix out to the lounge or something on a CD, and it's just like, all you get is like bass. That happens a lot, and bass trapping will help you to some degree. You're going to have to get quite thick bass traps, I would suggest. Now, you can get some cheap room kits. Mine is a cheap room kit because at the time that was all I could afford. Yeah, I'm kind of in the market now where I can upgrade my acoustic treatment a bit. So your bass traps need to be 4 inches thick, 4 to 6 inches thick at least. And they need to be wall to floor, floor to ceiling is what I meant. They need to be floor to ceiling, and they need to, because the corners of your room, you have two walls that meet, but you also have, the corners of your ceiling as well, and the corners of your floor that all meet. And that's kind of where your bass, the bass frequencies kind of get caught up and built up. So if you've got, a bass trap in that corner that basically covers the whole corner, and has like a little bit of an air pocket at the back behind it, then what that does is that traps more bass. And it means you can get a better bass balance out of your room. So bass trapping is really, really important. Just Bob says, so we are talking about acoustic treatment to deaden excess sound, right? So when an opera theatre is acoustically built to carry sound to the audience, there is no sound deadening, correct? Yes and no. If you go to somewhere like the Royal Albert Hall in London, which was designed for orchestral and operatic works to be performed in that space, it is fantastic for those kind of things. Now, it features a massive dome. Why is the dome there? The dome there is there because it acts as a natural reverb chamber, essentially. And the building is beautifully circular. There are no parallel surfaces in the Albert Hall. So it's a great venue to go and play because of that. Now, the problem it has is the louder music has got over the decades and over the centuries, the more that the liveliness of that space has become a problem. So what they did about 30 years ago was they got these massive, great big mushroom-shaped pieces of foam or some kind of acoustic material. I'm not really sure entirely what they're made out of. They may be made out of rock wool. They may be made out of fiberglass. I'm not 100% sure. But they suspended these from the ceiling of the dome. And there are loads of them. There's about 40 or 50 of them in the dome. And what that means is that those absorb a lot of the sound that goes up into that dome. And so the reverberation time of the room is decreased considerably. But it means that listening to music is much more pleasant, especially, as music has got louder and we use amplification more. So I went there to see the Brecker Brothers in 1993, and there were certain parts of the building, certain parts of the room where it sounded great. And there are certain parts of the room where all you got was just reflections, and it didn't sound great. Because that room is not really designed for something like the Brecker Brothers Band and Dennis Chambers on drums. So, and then, of course, I went and saw them at Ronnie Scott's the following year, Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club in London. And completely different acoustics altogether. So, yeah. So some venues will have some deadening, some acoustic curtains and that kind of thing to contain some of the reflections. And some will have less. Like churches in particular don't have a lot. They're designed to be naturally fairly reverberant. And quite often they have a dome or something similar. Because that acted as an amplifier. So whoever was preaching, their voice would carry across the whole church naturally without the need for any amplification. That was how they designed, particularly some of the older churches that were built in this, the late 1700s and maybe early 1800s. They were built that way so that the human voice would carry and have impact without any amplification because there was no amplification. And then the problem is that nowadays modern churches feature rock bands to do worship rather than organs these days. And so there are now amplification in a room that is designed to be a natural amplifier. And so you have to acoustically treat those rooms now. And I talk to a lot of churches where all I do is I'm advising them on acoustic treatment so that their their worship spaces are much more comfortable for the listener and the worshipper. So they're not being distracted by lots of reflections and stuff like that. So some big venues will have some treatment and some won't have some treatment. So it kind of depends, really. Mike says, is my room designed with Dennis in mind? John Lake asks a very Beatles-orientated question. How many holes does it take to fill the Albert Hall? Yeah, there are questions like that about Hitler and his anatomy as well. Okay, let's go up. Lollipop Guild says, that's an old world problem. They just knock them down and build new ones here. Yeah. Yeah, it's too expensive for us. Let's see. All right, cool. Some really, really good advice there. Some really good advice there in the chat about acoustic treatment, like bookcases. There's a studio, I forget where it is now, where a lot of the mix with the masters videos are shot, if you've ever seen any of those. I think it's in a studio in France. And they don't have any foam panels on the walls at all. They have bookcases. Lots of bookcases with lots and lots of books in them. And that's their acoustic treatment. And it works beautifully. So bookcases can really, really work. Just load them up with books. Even if you never read the books, just go to a flea market, go to a store where they are selling lots of secondhand books for a few cents, and go spend $100 on, 200 books. Put them in your bookshelves, and they will absorb very, very nicely. I know, because my old room used to have bookshelves. This one doesn't, but my old one did. And my old one had a beautiful, I don't know if you remember it, it had that drawer cabinet at the back that used to be kind of over here. And that was a bass trap. And it was fantastic. And as soon as I took that out of the room, suddenly the bass was all over the shop, I tell you. But anyway, that is a whole nother story. Mike says the US doesn't have churches from the 11th, 12th, and 13th centuries either. Exactly. Excellent point. Very well made, Mike. All right, so my subject for tonight, now that we're about roughly halfway through the show, was we're going to look at panning. And the reason we're going to look at panning is it's a little bit of a hot topic at the moment. I have noticed, so I thought I would address my take on panning and how to do it, how not to do it, in my opinion, and how to get your mixes to sound massively wide and big and fulsome in the stereo spectrum. And there are lots of ways in which you can accomplish the same thing, so don't just take my way of doing it as being the only way of doing it. There are lots and lots of different ways to accomplish the same thing, and there will be a plethora of opinions. I will have my opinion, Jonny Guy will have his, Dave Ignola will have his, Mika Han will have his, and my good friend Warren Hewitt will have his as well. And as everything with mixing, nothing is set in stone, and neither should it be. There are good principles that you can try out and see if they work for you and they work for your mixes. And that's it, really. So what I teach here is just principles that you can go try. And if it works for you, wonderful. If it doesn't work for you, try something else. I'm okay with that. I'm okay if you say, hey, I tried your LCR panning, your left, center, right panning, and it didn't really do much for me. So I'm going to try something else. That's fine. Don't have a problem with that at all. So panning. All right, for this, we're going to go into Studio One, and we are going to check out one of my songs, because the last time I tried to use someone else's songs, even though they are one of my clients, I got demonetized. So not going to do that again. As much as his song was a fantastic example, not going to use his songs again because I got demonetized. So, and I don't want that. So What you're looking at here is my song Paper Deity from 2016, although this is the remix that I did for the mixing series, Mixing with Jonny Lipsham series that I did earlier in the year. And so this was the mix that we did for that. So what I'm talking about here is what is commonly known as LCR panning. Left, center, right. Now, obviously, in Studio One, we have these variable sliders. So, for example, this trumpet here, I can move this to varying different degrees of left, center, or rightness, if I can call it that. And on a lot of consoles, you can just turn the pan pot and you'll have varying degrees of left, center, rightness on the pan pot. But there are some earlier consoles, particularly in the early days of stereo, where you didn't have that. It was just a switch. It was a center switch, and it was a switch that only had 3 points on it. So it would either be center, left, or right. And when it was left, it was all the way over the left. When it was right, it was all the way over on the right. And so I kind of think that this is where this whole concept was born. And I certainly remember when I first started getting into mixing in the 1990s, that one of the things I would do to start with was I would kind of like pull, I wouldn't have things panned all the way out. I would kind of, everything would kind of be, somewhere between 50 and 80%. I would never really pan all the way left or all the way right. Until I forget who it was. I can't remember who it was. I wish I could remember who it was who said, hey, why don't you try just panning everything either extreme left or extreme right or right up the middle? And he said, if you do that, your mixes won't sound so narrow in the stereo field. I go, okay, I'll give this a try. So I did. And my mixes just sounded massively wider. As you'll hear with this particular mix here, and we've got the phase meter here as well. So we can actually, as well as hearing it, we can actually see it in action here. And, so often I see other colleagues when they're playing their mixes and they run it through this bad boy, the squiggle that appears in the middle. I'll show you the squiggle in just a second, but the squiggle, when it appears, fills up like this entire spectrum. And I'll admit, it is a challenge to be able to get your mix to kind of fill this out quite a lot. Now, obviously, I don't think a good song, a good balanced mix is kind of going to be really, really massively wide all the way through the song. I think that's going to be just as boring as if everything was completely mono for the whole song. I think that's just as bad. I think you need to have contrast. So that's what I've tried to do with Paper Deity, was to make the chorus, pretty wide. It does go out pretty wide. And then the verse is almost right up the middle here where it says M. You got this nice M line here. And then you got side, and then left and right. This is kind of how this little graph here works. And then you've got this squiggle that appears in a minute. I'll show you that. And I like to try and get, most of this covered in the choruses and then, relatively up the middle line here for the verses. So you've got that contrast between wide for choruses because you want the chorus to be big and impactful, and then kind of relatively narrow, almost mono, in fact, for the verses. And so this is kind of what I do with my mixes, and the result is you get a lot of width and a lot of breadth, but you also you get nice contrast as well. So why don't we play this a little bit from the beginning of the chorus going into the next verse, so we can see the contrast between the width and then the narrowness. So I hope you guys are in that kind of apex between your speakers so you can hear this the best, or you're wearing headphones or earbuds or something like that. If you're wearing one of those, then that would be great, because then you'll hear this the best. Okay, here we go.
In God we trust, says on the bill, from boom to bust, may give a thrill. It can steal your life, dominate your goals, make a trouble and strife, seek another soul. This little paper deity, let's go and flash the plastic, blow it all on hot girls and wheels.
So you can see in the verse there that it's pretty much right up this middle line here. So everything's gone quite mono. And occasionally you see it flash out to the sides a little bit with the reverbs and the delays being in effect. But when we're in this chorus section and you hear the backing vocals and the horns and then the Hammond out wide as well, it does make a big difference. So let's just close this guy and I can show you what we've done with the panning here. So I've got the lead vocals right up the middle, and then I've spread the backing vocals left, center, and right, and then we've got this additional backing vocal here. This guy only comes in at one point. So most of the time it's 3-part backup harmonies, and then there's one point where you have this extra 4th part in here. The tenor sax solo is up the middle because it's a featured instrument, so it should be. And then the horn section in green here, the trumpet and tenor sax, they are out wide, left and right. And then the Hammond is all the way over to the right. The Fender Rhodes is up the middle. Now, the reason why the Fender Rhodes is up the middle is because this is the one that's playing the kind of rhythm chord part, which a bit like a rhythm guitar part, all the way through the song. So this guy needs to be up the middle as well. And then my guitars, moving across, this tremolo guitar only comes in the choruses. So this is slapped out wide. And then we've got this rhythm guitar part here that's out on the right. And then I've got the muted guitar part, which is up the middle. And it is kind of just a smidge left, but it's mostly right up the middle. Bass should always go up the middle, unless you are working on a Beatles song in the middle 1960s, in which case you can put all the instruments on the left and the vocal on the right, or vice versa. Drums, this is stereo, so this is up the middle, overheads are up the middle. Percussion, that's a stereo track as well, so that is up the middle also. And then all my buses are up the middle, and my parallel buses are all up the middle as well, because these are all stereo tracks, stereo channels, I should say. So that's essentially how I've done the panning for this. And it's dead quick and easy to do. Now, there are some points in this song where probably I should automate the panning for the Hammond so that in some cases it's on the right and in some cases it's on the left, so that we always keep an even balance between left and right, especially when in the verse, maybe when this tremolo guitar drops out, it should flit over to the left. I didn't do that. I think I maybe just forgot to do it, to be honest. But yeah, so that's essentially how I have left, right, and center panning set up. And as you could see from the phase meter, you end up with something that's actually pretty wide out to the left and to the right, and it certainly sounds a lot wider than if I was to only pan things out to about 80% left and 80% right, and sort of variations between that. Now, the only time, and I haven't done it in this case because the drums are basically just a stereo recording. The only time I would maybe do something different with drums, other than left, center, right, and that is if I have multi-mic'd drums. and I have like 4 or 5 toms and that kind of thing, then the toms would be spread out across the stereo spectrum. I wouldn't have them sort of left, center, right. I would have those arranged maybe from drummer's perspective across the stereo spectrum. So you get this nice sort of panning of the drum fill going across your head if you're wearing headphones, or from left to right if you're just on speakers. So that's kind of the way I do panning. Michael Johnson says, can you explain the meter on the bottom? I still do not fully understand it. Which meter are you talking about on the bottom? On the bottom of what? You need to be a little bit more specific there, Michael, if you don't mind. David says, it's a phase correlation meter. If there's a phase issue anywhere, it will swing to the right of the meter. As long as it's to the left, you're okay on phase cancellation issues. Mike says, I noticed it stayed quite a bit towards the right on the example he just played. Yes, Just Bob is correct. It's the other way round. Yeah, the phase meter, it's called the phase meter. Yes. When it's the other way round from what you said, David. Okay, so Just Bob is correct. To the right is good, and to the left is bad. Okay, and there are various ways in which you can test that. But I would totally wreck this mix if I did that. So so we're maybe not going to do that. But if I play the same section and we flip this into mono, you can see what happens to the phase correlation then.
In God we trust, says on the bill. From boom to bust, may give a thrill. It can steal your life, dominate your goals, make a trouble and strife. Seek another soul, this little paper deity.
That might not have made any difference whatsoever because it's post fader. So yeah, so that might not have made any difference whatsoever to the phase correlation by whacking this into mono. But yeah, so there you go. So that's kind of what the phase correlation thing does at the bottom. It just tells you if you've got any elements of your mix that are out of phase, and you will need to go and redress those if that's the case. And a good way to do that is to listen in mono, because you can hear phase cancellation very clearly in mono. And by that I mean you might find that the sound of a particular audio source thins out or goes kind of hollow, metallic kind of sounding, or an element might just completely disappear altogether. I've had that happen before, where I've done a mix critique for somebody, and they sent me the mix, and I put it in mono, and the backing vocals just completely disappear. You can't hear them. You can hear the ghosts of them in the reverb or the delay, but you can't actually hear the direct sound of the backing vocals. And it was all because there were phase issues with the way those backing vocals have been recorded or the way they've been mixed, that had thrown them almost 180% out, 180 degrees, not percent, 180 degrees out of phase. So those are things that you need to be aware of, and this is really helpful for helping you find those kind of things. So I hope that answers that question. Mika says, calibrate your monitor system so you're hearing the correct balance of your mix. Correct. Absolutely. I could not agree more with that. Greg says, when panning harmony, what order do you use? Is it 3rd, 7th, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, or does it not matter? I don't think it matters. I think you go with, wherever you want the voices to encircle the lead vocal, which is what I try to do. I try to have them to kind of encircle the lead vocal. So I maybe don't always do left, center, right panning with backing vocals. It kind of depends. Sometimes I want them out wide because they only come in the chorus, and I want the chorus to be big. But if they are something that comes in and out throughout the verses as well, I will maybe have a different panning system for those. And some people go soprano, alto, left, or soprano and alto left, tenor in the middle, and bass on the right. Some people do that. If it's 4-part harmony. Depends on who the lead vocalist is, I think, as well. If the vocal is, in this case, a tenor, then maybe you could put the tenor and the bass off to the right, and the soprano alto off to the left, and then you're left with the tenor vocal in the middle. You could certainly do that. I don't think it matters too terribly much, personally, for me. And yes, pan is short for panorama. So yeah, that's what I would do. Mika says, red state metering. Of course, right is good and left is bad. Let's see. Mika says, this isn't HST. No, this is Jonny Lipsham Studios. Let's see. I'm trying to see what's going on in the chat here. But very good to see you, Mika, and have you in the chat. Always good to have you in the chat, sharing your thoughts. Mika says, symmetry in a song is overrated. It's become a thing ever since the virtual representation of multi-tracks indoors. Symmetry is what modern country lives and dies by. Yeah, I think I know what you mean. I think I know exactly what you mean, actually, about symmetry. And I for as much as I kind of agree with left, center, right panning, it's not something I always do. As I've said, I will not necessarily do it with drums, and I'll not necessarily do it with backing vocals. And if there's a big horn section, in this case there isn't, there's only a trumpet and tenor sax, but if I had a much bigger horn section, I had maybe 2 trumpets, alto, tenor, trombone, and baritone sax, then I would spread those out a bit. I wouldn't do LCR panning there either. And if I've got more keyboards, like if I've got, in this case, I've only got Hammond organ and the Fender Rhodes. If I had a Wurlitzer A200, a D6 clavinet, and the Hammond, and maybe a bunch of synths like a Juno or something like that in the mix, then yes, if I have lots of keyboard parts, lots of guitar parts, I'm going to spread them out a bit. I'm not necessarily going to go left, center, right, left, center, right. For as much as it looks good on the screen that you're looking at right now, it kind of looks pretty good, panning left, pan right, center, pan left, pan right, center. It kind of looks quite good. But really, it's not about how it looks on the screen. It's how it sounds to you, to your ears, and how balanced the mix is. You can, for as much as you do LCR panning, you can still end up with too many things on the right and not enough things on the left. And so you can end up in a head spin that way as well. That would be my opinion. And I'm now going to go back down the bottom. Kyle says, I took a stereo piano, added the binaural pan, lessened the width, and moved it over to the left, maybe left 100 for the left and left 60 for the right to taste. Yeah, that might work. Don't see why it wouldn't. Mike says, for those who don't know how to calibrate your monitors, here's a very good video by the one and only Rick Nackby from Presonus. Yes, that is a great video, and I used that to do my own speakers. When I moved from the old room to this room, I did the same calibration test again to just make sure that everything is as it should be. Using pink noise, and it worked a treat. Lollipop says, think of it like taking the listener's ear on a tour around the whole panorama. You can put heavier weight on one side for a short time if you balance out shortly after by repeating on the other side. Yes, that is quite true. Just Bob says, on some old records they have choirs on them. If you split the wall in thirds from bottom to top, you can audibly hear bass near the floor, tenor in the middle of the wall, and soprano on the top. How's that done? I don't actually know, because I don't ever really get the chance to mix choral stuff, actually. Mika says, anyone here watch Jonny Guy's last show last night / this morning? Yes, I did. And he actually got a surprisingly large audience. Hey, I should probably go back to me, because I'm sure you're sick of staring at Studio One. There we go. Yeah, I saw it, and it was really good. I think he had about 20 people there, and I was watching it whilst I was having my breakfast, which is most unusual for a Sunday morning, to be sat watching Jonny's show and eating my breakfast, which is great. It was a really good show. And impressed with the number of people that were there. So we got about 9 minutes left. Let's see. Michael Johnson says, thanks, I need to review the process. I have a shotgun mic designed for testing with noise and sweeps. I just can't remember the software I used. Yeah, there is great speaker calibration software out there, and there's some good mics that can help you with that process as well. Setting up your monitoring system so that everything is balanced and everything is correct is really, really important. So not just having them balanced in terms of the correct amount of volume coming from each speaker, but actually how you have them placed is really important as well. Having your speakers placed in the correct spot is very, very important. It can make or break anything you do in your studio if you don't have them in the right place. And I'm sure that everybody would agree with that. Yeah, Lollipop says, nice crowd for an off time. Yeah, it was actually really good. And he covered the subject matter really well as well. It was a good little subject to cover. Alrighty, so we got 8 minutes left. So I'm going to use the last few minutes. Actually, let's just check out this last question. British label, big or small label? No, I haven't personally heard of Detour Records, I'm afraid. Maker, yes, he did. He had about 20 people there, which is great for that time of the day. So, I think it actually helped a lot of people out in Europe and the UK. Because for me, it was like 9 o'clock in the morning. For folks in Western and Central Europe, it was 10 in the morning. So it was a good time to do it, actually. So I'm going to use the last few minutes here to talk about changes that are coming here at Jonny Lipsham Studios. I've talked about this a fair amount already, but I'm just going to, kind of keep referring back to it regularly before it all happens and all the changes come into effect. So I'm going to be launching all of the new stuff on November the 10th, which is a Sunday. So I'm going to be doing a couple of shows to make sure I catch as many people as possible. And Jonny and I are going to do something as well, which we haven't really talked about much yet. Don't really know what we're going to be doing, but we're certainly going to do something to kind of celebrate the launch as well. And so what is coming? Well, what is coming is a brand new Jonny Lipsham Studios website with new graphics, new logos. The entire look of everything is going to change. And so that's going to affect my YouTube channel. There's going to be new graphics for that as well. The website, Facebook page, they're all getting a complete overhaul. plus the VIP members area is coming. That will be launched on November the 10th as well. And there will be 2 brand new courses that will be available to members, plus a brand new forum which will be there. And every month there will be a new challenge which will be suggested by members that we can do, which might be a mixing challenge or a songwriting challenge or an arranging challenge, or whatever it might well be that you guys who become members of Jonny Lipsham Studios, whatever your heart's desire, and the highest voted suggestion will be the one that we do for that month. So every month there will be a challenge, and every month there will also be a private members only show, kind of a little bit like this one, except the one for the members will be specifically for them and for the issues that they have in their studios, the issues that they have in their mixes, and whatever they're currently working on. So it'll be much more geared towards, instead of being topic driven like this show is, or being just basically open Q&A like this show is, the members only show will be specific to their things that they are dealing with, and how they got on with a particular challenge that they took part in for the month. And so and we'll kind of review the challenge and see how people got on and what they produced at the end of it. Every challenge is going to be a practical challenge. It's going to be something that you need to complete, something you need to do, and get out into the public domain. Okay, kind of a bit like the December 10th challenge I did last year, which I may well actually do again this year, because it was, quite a few people got on board. So it'd be nice if maybe we do it again and more people get on board with it. So a little bit like that, but this time, instead of being open to the general public, every month there'll be one that is just for the members to do, and the members only. So there's that. And as I say, forum and interactive live stream, which will actually be a little bit different than this, actually, because I'm going to be using a different streaming software than just YouTube. Because with just YouTube, I'm kind of a little bit stuck with having to look at a screen over here and read what you're saying on the chat, and people involved are a little bit stuck with having to type out what they want to say. So, if they've got a particularly complicated question, that's a lot of typing, and there is a character limit on YouTube. On the other streaming software, you guys can actually speak. If you allow the streaming software to use your camera and your mic, we can actually interact, and you can actually talk to me, and I can actually hear you in my headphones. I can actually hear your pretty voices. So for some, that might well be a little bit intimidating, in which case you don't have to, you can still type away in the chat if you prefer that. But if you have a complicated question that you just don't want to have to type out, you'd rather verbalize it, you can. And we can also see you. If you want to use your camera to allow us to see you, we can do, like if you want to demonstrate something on your guitar or demonstrate something on your keyboard or whatever it is, that can be done as well. So so that'll be the members only live stream show that'll happen every month. So that is going to be cool. I'm looking into this software at the moment, going to see how practical and how useful it's going to be, and hopefully it will be. It'll do everything that we want it to do. So that is going to be very cool. I'm really, really looking forward to that. Mika says, you're leaving up to the plebs? Yes, that's the whole point of a membership, as far as I'm concerned. Just Bob says, great challenge. Everyone submits one line for one. Everyone submits one line for a song. No topic mentioned. We all submit one line. I have a chorus ready that no one knows. Then we put it to music and see how well we do. Well, that could be quite fun. So So yeah. And you don't have to use your camera if you don't want to. Mika says, make sure you have at least a 20-second delay. Well, everyone will be a paid up member, so it will be a safer environment than just opening up, this show to all and sundry. And people being able to just come in and just talk over the top of everybody. So it won't be like that, and it'll be very easy for me to manage, because I can mute you all at once when I want to talk, so you guys can't talk over the top of me. And you can just tap away in the chat if you want to, a little bit like we normally do here. So yeah, it's going to be very, very cool, and you don't have to use your camera if you don't want to. Okay, I'm not going to make that a rule that you have to always use your camera if you want to ask a question, because that's not very fair. Likewise, you don't have to use your microphone if you don't want to either. You can just do what you do here and just type it out in chat. So it will be fine. And so yes, so that VIP members thing is coming on November 10th. And as I say, it's coming with 2 brand new courses. One that is on songwriting, and the other one is music theory. And I've been asked for the longest time to do those 2 courses. So those are going to be the first 2 courses that go into the members area. Now, if you decide you don't want to be a member, they will be available in my new web store, which is also coming on November the 10th. Everything is coming on November the 10th, really. And you'll be able to purchase them individually and have on your computer forever if you wish to. So you don't have to be a member if you don't want to. But financially, it works out better if you are a member, because members get access to not only these 2 courses, but every other course I make from now until I'm 103 years old. Or, whatever. Basically anything new that I make will go straight to the members area first before it goes anywhere else. So before it goes to the store, the members will get it first, and will be able to get it for no extra cost. So your membership fee covers everything, including the new courses. So it's kind of a little bit like the Slate Everything bundle in that respect, that anything new he makes, Slate Everything bundle members just get. So same way for this, really, that you get access to all my new courses and stuff before they go up into the store. For the general public to get if they so want it. So there you go. It's going to be very, very cool. I'm very, very excited about it, because a lot of people have been asking for it for a very long time. And I know certain people have been waiting a very, very long time, because I started developing this 2 years ago, and it didn't work out very well at all, because I couldn't get the payment gateway to work at all. And so I had to abandon it, and I couldn't find a cost-effective way to do it until just very recently, in actual fact, just, maybe 2 or 3 months ago. So it's going to be very, very cool. I'm very excited about it, and hopefully it's going to just kind of like take my business forward considerably, and hopefully it is going to bless your socks off. And it's going to do you guys a lot of good, because that's what it's for. Fundamentally, that's what my VIP membership is for, is to do you guys good. And to help you make better music, and make better music today. Not tomorrow, not yesterday, today. That's kind of the idea, is to empower you, to give you tools, to give you training, to give you concepts, and to just kind of grow you as a musician, as a mix engineer, as a mastering engineer, as an all-round audio good person, basically. All right, so that's pretty much it. And Michael Johnson with a $5 donation. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that massively. That is very kind of you. Thank you. Budbox Guitar says, my face is so sweet, just like a chewed up toffee. That's very cool. Michael says, when I was born, the doctor spanked my face instead of my butt. That's very cool. and Lollipop with the sentence of the night. And I'm going to finish with this. She says, everybody's beautiful in their own way. Absolutely. And that's going to be our final thing for tonight. I think that's a great way to end the show. So I'm going to say a massive thank you to everybody for coming here. Thank you, Michael, for the donation. Appreciate it very muchly. And I will see you on Wednesday over on Jonny's channel, the Home Studio Trainer channel, for Songwriting Simplified. It's going to be a great show. I've already got some great ideas which I need to feed to Jonny over the course of the next few days, and it's going to be epic. It's going to be a great show. And then we'll be back here for Sunday. And we will be moving inexorably towards November 10th. So stay on the lookout for all sorts of stuff that's going to be coming between now and then. So if you're not a subscriber, hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Hit the like button, because that helps me a lot as well. And I will see you all on Wednesday. It's going to be epic. Good night, everybody.